Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a tag video. This is the nonfiction on Booktube Tag, and it was originally created by Olive at the book Olive. I will link her original video down below, and she graciously tagged me in her original video. So I guess I should say at this point, welcome to all my new subscribers. Ever since Olive shouted me out, I noticed that there are quite a few of you that have joined, and I hope that you find some good nonfiction books to read from what I talk about. So I'm just going to get right into this tag. I have the questions here in my my little, if you can see that, that's my little notebook my daughter gave me for me to take my notes in for my Booktube channel. So question one is, how much nonfiction do you read? And so I went back and looked at my 2018 stats, and from that I was able to see that I read 40% of the books that I read in 2018 were nonfiction. And then I've looked at my journal for this year, and about 31% so far this year. Of course, that number is going to go way up because I plan to read mostly nonfiction here in November, so that will definitely grow those numbers, and I imagine I will end up the year in 2019 about the same, about 40%. I really love nonfiction. I always have a nonfiction book on the go. It happens that a lot of the nonfiction are quite chunky that I read, and so therefore I don't get through as many as I do fiction books. So question two is, what kind of nonfiction videos do you make or do you want to make for Booktube? So I talk about nonfiction in almost all of my videos. Definitely all of my sort of like recent and current reads type videos have nonfiction in them for the most part. A lot of tags that I do, I will mention nonfiction titles. So basically all my content will have some nonfiction in it. I have done some videos that are specifically about nonfiction. For example, I did way back in the beginning, I did a science nonfiction book recommendation video. I've done at least one video, if not more than one, about my presidential reading challenge, which is all about presidential biographies that I've been reading through each of the presidents in chronological order. And then recently I also did my top 50 nonfiction books video, which was really fun project. I really enjoyed doing that, and I have had a lot of comments about it, and I think what I will do is probably like once a year I'll try to update that and see if there's any new books that will make it onto that list. So question three is, what is your favorite subgenre of nonfiction? And for me, I think I like all kinds of nonfiction, although I don't really read like self-help much, so I do kind of it's not that I avoid it, I just don't read much of it, but I would say my number one favorite type of nonfiction is science and nature nonfiction. I particularly love sort of natural history or nature-based writing that also blends sort of memoir or the author's experience, like in the rest of her or his life, and how that relates to the science and nature part. I really like Lab Girl, Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. Those two, couple of my favorites I really love that blend that nature writing with memoir. And question four is, do you have a favorite nonfiction book? This is, as everyone else has said, is really difficult to do, but I'll just go with the book that I recently chose as my number one pick for my top 50 list, and that was looking at my reading over the last 4 or 5 years, and that is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I've talked about this book many times on this channel, but I absolutely love this book about how we approach end-of-life care and medical intervention, and I think it should be required reading for everyone. Question five, what do you think keeps people from wanting to read more nonfiction? I think one very physical thing that keeps people from wanting to read more nonfiction is the length of nonfiction books. You know, people see, like, for example, I started reading this biography of Frederick Douglass, which is a super chunker. Like, a lot of people are going to be intimidated by the size of that book and not want to pick it up. So I think that happens a lot with nonfiction. People are like, oh man, that is a huge book, and I can't commit to reading something that long. And then there's the fear that it will be boring or too academic or too much like being in school. I hear that a lot from people. It is my experience is that there is some kind of nonfiction for everyone, and so I would just encourage you definitely to overlook sometimes what might be a knee-jerk reaction to picking up nonfiction in order to try some stuff. Use your library. That's a cheap way to try things out to see if you like them. Question 6, why do you like nonfiction? I always want to know why. So I have been one of those obnoxious people my entire life that always has to know why something is the way it is, or the story behind it, or more information about it. I actually, in the past, when I was a kid and in school, got in trouble a couple of times for the teacher felt I was questioning them too much, right? But it was just my natural curiosity to want to know more about a subject. Like, I can very clearly remember in my high school biology class learning about protons, neutrons, and electrons, the building blocks of life, right? And my question to my biology teacher was, well, if these things are so small and nobody can see them, how do we know they exist? And she got so frustrated by my questioning of that she blew up at me and kind of told me off. And it wasn't that I was trying to, one-up her or make her look dumb or anything like that. It was just that I honestly wanted to know the reason. How did we know this information? How had we come to this knowledge? And she just couldn't explain it to me, at least in a way that I could understand, and it made her frustrated. So that's been me my whole life. And so I have found that instead of just questioning people all the time, a lot of an easier way for me to approach that is to read a book about it. And also I'm a huge nosebag. So that's like, I love memoirs, and I read a lot of funny celebrity type memoirs because I'm a nosebag. I'm not gonna lie. Question 7, what's a nonfiction book you read because of Booktube? The most recent one that comes to mind is Underland by Robert McFarlane. I saw several people talking about this book on Booktube, but specifically Amy Anders was reading it and talking about it and describing it, and I had to read it. I just had to read it after listening to her talk about it and sing its praises. It was like, yeah, that sounds like a book I want to read, and it was awesome. It was one of my favorite books of the year so far. Also read, because of Booktube, H is for Hawk. I don't think I would have ever picked that book up, even though it seems like it's in my wheelhouse, like the juxtaposition of science and nature writing and memoir. It seems like, but I knew it was about grief and I knew it was about hawks, and neither one of those things were things that I was particularly interested in, but everybody kept talking about it, how great it was, and so I read it, and I'm glad I did. Question 8. What's the best nonfiction book you've read lately? The best, my highest rating, or one of the top nonfiction books that I've read this year, I would say, is The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. I buddy read this with a group of ladies back in September. It's all about the Great Migration of African Americans from the southern part of the U.S. to the northern states, all through Jim Crow time, late 1800s through the Civil Rights era in the 1960s. And it was amazing narrative nonfiction. Wilkerson follows 3 individuals and their histories and how they migrated from different areas of the South to different areas in the northern and western part of the United States, and weaves in the history of the time through these individuals' narratives, and it was amazing. It was such a great book. I absolutely recommend that one. Question 9, what are some of your nonfiction reading goals? So I'm sitting here in front of this top shelf is my physical nonfiction to be read pile, and so that's a goal is to read down that pile and get it, reduced by some amount. I don't have a hard number in mind, but I definitely want to read from my own shelf. I also am going to be participating as a judge again in 2020 for the Booktube Prize, and in 2020 Robert has added a nonfiction category to the prize, and so I am going to be judging some of those rounds for the nonfiction prize as well as the fiction prize. So that's a goal, is to read 2019 nonfiction in order to get ready for Booktube Prize judging, and I'm super excited about looking forward to participating in that next year. And then, of course, I want to continue on with my presidential reading challenge. I'm currently on Rutherford B. Hayes, and so I usually try to at least make it a goal to read 3 or 4 of the presidential biographies in a year. So, next year, hopefully can get up to, maybe the 1900s in my presidential reading. Question 10, what's your advice for incorporating more nonfiction into your reading diet? My number one piece of advice for people is audiobooks. If you are intimidated by nonfiction, I think audiobooks are a great way to get into the genre, especially if you like. A good way to start would be with funny stuff like celebrity memoir or comedian memoirs. There's also just funny, I don't even know what they're called. They're not memoirs, but takes on a topic that are meant to be amusing or whatever, like the Darwin Award books, where it talks about people who do stupid things and therefore get killed because of it. Those are funny and would be amusing on audiobook. But I think pretty much all kinds of nonfiction, except for really, really academic stuff, are good on audiobook. So like I mentioned before, I started this Frederick Douglass biography. I'm listening to it on audiobook. The narrator, whose name escapes me at the moment, has an amazing narrative style. It's like, oh my God, his voice is like butter. And so it's made this very compelling biography even more awesome, because I just love the narrator's voice and I could just listen to him for hours. I find it very soothing, but also keeps my interest. And so that would be my advice to you, is to try audiobooks with nonfiction. You can borrow them through your local library. Usually most libraries have a online app, either through Overdrive or libraries use different apps for their electronic content, and they usually have an audiobook portion of that. I would definitely try that because it won't cost you anything to try it. I also use Scribd, which is a monthly subscription service, which gives me access to ebook and audiobook for like $9 a month or something. And they actually meter your audiobook content, so you can only usually borrow like 2 or 3 audiobooks a month, and I'm often running up against my my limits there. And I shouldn't say they only let you borrow 2 to 3 audiobooks a month. They let you borrow like the most popular, newest audiobooks, 2 or 3 a month, and then there are other audiobooks that are older or less popular that you could borrow as many as you want. So there's always something there that I can listen to on audiobook for like $8 or $9 a month. So I think that's a pretty good value. I used to do Audible, which is more like $15 a month for credits, like 1 or 2 credits, but I'm finding Scribd to meet my needs right now. So definitely try audiobooks for your nonfiction. And then the last part is to list some nonfiction book channels that I love. A lot of the folks that I watch have already done this tag and have probably already been listed, but I'm just going to list them all anyway because, I watch them and you may not have heard of them, and I want you to watch them too. So there's Doris over at Aldi Books. There's Alba as Seriella, Jen at Remembered Reads, Kazan at Always Doing, Brian at Bookish, Robert at Barter Hordes, Amy Anders. Winsong Reads is a new channel to me, and I really love her content. She's doing some great nonfiction stuff that's gotten me to add some things to my wish list. And also, Richardson Reads, he is a librarian, and he has great nonfiction recommendations as well. So I'll list all of those channels down below. If any of you have not done this tag and would like to, please consider yourself tagged, as well as the folks that I just listed. I would love to see all of your answers to these questions. I think this is a fantastic tag that Olive has created, and I think it's going to give us a lot of great nonfiction content to refer back to for a long time. So I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully finding some great nonfiction books to read here in this nonfiction November time period, and then the rest of the year as well. I'll talk to you later.